So, does the world really need another magic mushrooms experience video? Probably not, but here it comes anyway. I had a trip in Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago and it was fantastic. I thought I would do a video about it, partly for some friends of mine who might be interested in what it was like, but also for other people, maybe older people like me. I'm 66, so you don't see too many video records on YouTube of older folks who've done psychedelics, so I thought it'd be worth throwing my experience and opinions into the mix for other older folks who might be thinking of going down this road. So yeah, this cannot sensibly be a recommendation to anyone to do a psychedelic experience because it's a personal thing. It depends very much on your own psychological good health, physical health as well, I suppose. Depends where you are, where you could do it, whether it's legal, how prepared you are for it, all sorts of factors. So yeah, in most countries in the world it's probably illegal. It wasn't where I did it, in Amsterdam. But legalities aside, it's a serious decision that you've got to make after doing as much research as you can, maybe talking to people who have experience in this area, maybe talking to your own medical advisor, psychologist or psychiatrist even, if that's kind of relevant to your situation. So yeah, it's a serious thing to do. It's not the kind of thing. So if you're taking a trip, let's say a magic mushrooms trip, it seems to me that it's not the kind of thing you can put a toe in the water with. You have to stick your whole leg and your whole body and your whole mind into the water. And once you do, there's no going back. So that's a serious thing to consider. Having said that, if you are a pretty settled person, so let's say I'm talking to an audience of older people. If you're in your 50s or 60s, you've led a full life. If you're my kind of age, I'm 66, then you've been through a bit, marriage, children, grandchildren, various experiences, good, bad and indifferent, all of the kind of stuff that you go through in a normal life. If you've been through that and you feel pretty settled and psychologically solid, I think it's an interesting thing to consider. You still have to do your own research, consult in whatever way you think is appropriate for your circumstances. But for me, it was a fabulous experience and an intriguing one. And I will probably do it again at some stage, I would imagine. It's worth having a think about, and I'll go into some of that later on. So, yeah, to cut to the chase, I was in an Airbnb on the outskirts of Amsterdam. Nice place, sort of attached to a farmhouse, quite private, and arranged for my guide or trip sitter, I'll call him guide from here on in, to come to my place. He arrived 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon with 30 grams of truffles for me to take, which he sort of mashed up into a pasty consistency and mixed it with some hot water, made a tea out of it, which was quite palatable. I drank that, had a eye mask blindfold thingamy, which I put on, and lay down on the bed and waited for things to happen, which took about 15 minutes, I would say, before it sort of kicked in. So, what was it like? Is the $64,000 question. I've looked at quite a few other people's video records of their experience, and a lot of them seem to be able to be very specific about what they saw and heard and felt. I can't be that specific. I did not see recognizable objects or landscapes or plants or animals of any sort. I did not hear voices. I did not see creatures, aliens or other kind of beings. No God appeared, no devil either, thankfully. So yeah, and that might make it hard to describe what I did experience, but we'll give it a shot. The most compelling aspect of it for me was the music. So my guide brought along some music, which I was unfamiliar with. I didn't request any particular music. I thought I would put myself in his hands. He had done this a lot of times with a lot of different people, so I trusted him to give me the best experience. So yeah, the music was on from the beginning of the session. It was instrumental mostly. I think there might have been some vocalising at some point, but it wasn't your regular songs or chorus, verse, melody stuff. The music was so important during the session. It was another dimension, as real as time and space, as important to the fabric of this other world as time and space and colour were. And I suppose the other dimension of this world was just emotion, and not discrete emotions like you feel in this world, but some strange kind of concoction where there was a mixture of feeling and knowing, but without any discrete sort of concepts being identified. So, yeah, a very different way of being. But it was a beautiful way of being. The music was such a moving, in more than one way, vehicle that carried you through the whole experience. So it was like you were within the music. It was like the music was vibrating within you also. And it was as though the music was somehow a guiding force that took you through this landscape of colour and light and movement. So yeah, it's funny to reflect on what music is like for me now when I listen to it. It's just like normal music, and it hasn't changed particularly for me, but I can recognise that it is just not the same thing as the music that was in this other world. The music that was in this other world was just a different animal altogether, and so much more alive than music is in this world. And for me that's saying something, because I love music, and it's an important part of my enjoyment of life to listen to the music that I love. But yeah, what there was in this other world was just extraordinary. Words fail once again. So being carried through this world in a kind of wave of emotion and music was extraordinarily beautiful and very moving. I think I had tears streaming down my face a few times. The most clearly remembered or clearly understood, I suppose, aspect of the experience was a phase where I don't know how I came to recognize that I was in a different kind of feeling or experiencing mode than I had been previously in the trip. But I got to this place where I just felt, I wouldn't call it overwhelming, but an all-embracing feeling of warmth and love. And somehow I knew it was to do with my family. There weren't any voices telling me what was going on or any sort of direct communication, but somehow I sensed that this beautiful sort of bath of love that I was wallowing in was somehow to do with my family. And I think after a while of enjoying that, I possibly had some pathetic attempt to exert control over the situation, and I remember saying some extra names of people who are dear to me, not family members, in a kind of effort to tell whoever or whatever that, hey, you know, these people are very important to me too. Let's not forget about them. You know, can we somehow include them in this glorious experience? And as I said, I didn't hear voices or anything like that, but I understood a clear message coming through to me in some way. And the message was, look, it's all okay. Don't worry about it. Everybody is here. Everything that could possibly be important to you is here. Nothing is missing. It's all perfect. And you don't have to try to change it or improve it in any way whatsoever. So that was pretty extraordinary. Yeah. I think it was after about 3.5 hours that I kind of felt that I was sliding back into normal reality. And that wasn't a bad experience at all for me. I've read and heard and seen people talk about re-entry being a problem for them, but it wasn't for me. I took it slowly, just kept lying down for a while and then eventually sat up on the edge of the bed. I think my first coherent words to my guide at the end of it all was to turn to him and just say, fuck, what a gift, because it was just an extraordinarily beautiful and moving experience. So, yeah, wow is the appropriate expression. Okay, so that's probably enough inarticulate babbling by me about the actual experience, and I kind of wish I could give you a better description, more vivid description of what it was like, but yeah, all I can say is it's so outside of normal experience in a wonderful way for me as to defy description. So yeah. However, getting back to the realities of, you know, why to do it, if you should do it, how to do it, what could go wrong, all of that kind of stuff. There is no guarantee that you can have a good trip. People do have bad trips, or challenging trips, as they prefer to call them these days in the psychedelic world. There is something that can be done, I think, if you're in that sort of situation of having a bad trip. So my guide mentioned before we started that he had some kind of sugary solution, which can be helpful in bringing you down from the experience if you're in the throes of a bad patch. So I have no idea how effective that is. I have heard or read that other people have used more aggressive pharmaceutical interventions like Xanax, which is an anti-anxiety medication, benzodiazepine. So yeah, how effective those things are in getting you out of a sticky situation, I don't know. I'm speaking from experience of one trip only. So yeah, if you're thinking about going down this road, just do an awful lot of research. And as I said before, talk to anyone you think it's sensible to talk to, medical, psychological, psychiatric, whatever, to get the best decision you can for yourself as to whether you should try something like this or not. Another thing that I'm considering, if it becomes possible, is microdosing. So that's where you take a small amount of mushrooms, not enough to give you a hallucinatory experience, and you take them, say, every 3 days for a month or something like that, and that has supposedly got very good effects in improving your just everyday experience of life, making you more creative, productive, more relaxed, more connected to other people, to nature, that kind of stuff. So that's probably a safer way to go as far as, if you wanted to go down the path of psychedelics. But it's a totally different kettle of fish than doing a major trip, and I was more interested in the major trip. So that was a bit over 2 weeks ago now. So I've had plenty of time to process it, as they say, and have been in touch with my guide since then. It is an interesting thing to try and process, that's for sure, because it's so outside your normal reality. The very idea that you should somehow incorporate the experience into the rest of your life seems a bit odd to me, I must say. I think if it has a powerful effect on you straight out of the box kind of thing, straight away, or in the immediate aftermath, then well and good and great. If it doesn't, then I think, as I have done, it's probably good to just sit with it for a while. I have struggled to sort of articulate a meaning to pull from it, and part of the reason I struggle is that I have some suspicion that there's more to life, the universe, and happiness than necessarily finding meaning. So perhaps just accepting an extraordinary experience as being extraordinary and moving on is enough. I suppose, if anything, that concept or idea or living feeling of enoughness is something that I've been entertaining more and more since the experience. The idea of enoughness is an interesting one for me. I think it's possible to bring a perspective to your life that means you are not constantly evaluating your experience and rating it as okay, less than okay, better than okay, giving it a score. So yeah, as to what got me interested in doing this in the first place, three things, probably three main influences. A friend of mine had some exposure to acid, LSD, not in a major trip way, but I think a small dose, which she said was a wonderful experience. I read the Michael Pollan book, How to Change Your Mind, which was fascinating explorations of all things psychedelic, and have been a reasonably long-term listener to Sam Harris, and he's been a long-time meditator and now purveyor of the meditation app Waking Up, and he's had some experiences with psychedelics and early in his youth as well as recently, and talks interestingly about the interplay, if you like, between psychedelics and meditation, which is a thing that definitely interests me. So yeah, that's kind of what sparked me to go down this road. Happy I did. Would be happy, I think, to repeat the experience at some future time with mushrooms or truffles. My guide said he usually did a trip a couple of times a year, and found something new and different in each experience. So that sounds interesting. A friend of mine raised the issue somewhere along the line of addiction. I think the properties of the psilocybin substance are such that it's inherently not addictive, but addiction could be a tricky thing, I suppose, to define, whether it's residing in the substance or in the person who takes the substance or in the interaction between the two. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't feel any compulsion or interest in repeating the experience immediately afterwards. It's the kind of thing where it feels good to have some distance from it, actually. But then again, maybe I'm not the kind of person who is prone to addictive behaviour. I don't know. But yeah, as far as repeating this trip that I had, I no more wanted to do that than if I'd climbed Everest and got back to base camp. And, very unlikely you get back to base camp and say, hey, let's do that again. So yeah, for me, that aspect of it wasn't a problem. I'll put links in the description to some resources that I think are interesting. Those ones I mentioned, the Sam Harris, the Michael Pollan ones. I did come across an interesting YouTube video by a woman about her experiences, and she was, I think, a sufferer of some kind of mental illness, might have been schizophrenia. So that was an interesting video, bit of a cautionary tale, perhaps. Okay, final little bit of advice, if you want to call it that. If you are considering a psychedelic experience, amongst all the other caveats I've issued, first time around, I reckon you are out of your mind already if you try to do it without a trusted guide or trip sitter. So just in case things don't go well, I would imagine that it's crucial to have somebody standing by to keep you safe and help you through a difficult situation. So yeah, just throwing that in there again if I haven't already made that clear. Okay, I think I've been banging on for far too long, so we'll wrap it up here. If you've got anything you want to ask, by all means stick it in the comments and I'll respond if it's a civilised and sensible question. I reckon that'll do it for now. Okay, see ya.